Hi, welcome to Moments in History. I'm Linda Shenton-Matchett, author, speaker, and history geek. Research is one of my favorite aspects of writing, but for many reasons, lots of the information that I unearth does not end up in my books. So I've created this channel to share some of these intriguing tidbits. Today, I'm going to talk to you about Fred Harvey and his Harvey houses. By the early 1870s, traveling by train was a common method of transportation, and many Americans bundled themselves onto trains heading west. Unfortunately, at that time, few trains featured dining cars, George Pullman only having invented them in 1868. So, if passengers wanted food, they would have to disembark at one of the longer stops, find a restaurant, order their meal, and eat, all in the span of about an hour. There were two common problems with this. Many passengers failed to make the time limit and were left stranded in the train station, while others found the fare available at the train stops less than appetizing, even poisonous by some reports. Enter Fred Harvey. Born in London, England on June 27, 1835, Frederick Henry Harvey immigrated to the United States in 1853 at the age of 17. He took a job in New York as a pot scrubber and a busboy at Smith and McNell's restaurant, a very popular restaurant in the city. The proprietors taught him the importance of quality service, fresh ingredients, and the handshake deal, and he quickly worked his way up to busboy, then waiter, and finally line cook. After 18 months, he moved on to New Orleans, where he survived yellow fever, then moved on to St. Louis, where he got a job in a jewelry store. By 1856, he had met and married Barbara Mattis, with whom he had 6 children. Despite successful employment, Fred felt compelled to return to the food industry. He started a cafe with a partner, and the two ran a very profitable business. However, the Civil War soon intervened. The partner was sympathetic to the Confederacy and left town, taking all of the money the two of them had earned. Fred managed to get back on his feet working as a mobile mail clerk in the booming railroad business. He ascended the corporate ladder and was transferred to Leavenworth, Kansas, which would remain his home for the rest of his life. Fred traveled frequently while working for the railroads and found himself deeply dissatisfied with the food that was served to travelers. While still working for the Burlington Railroad Company, Fred began a business venture with Jasper S. Rice to set up 2 different eating houses that were located 280 miles apart along the Kansas Pacific Railroad. But once again, the partnership did not last. Fred then pitched the idea to set up eating establishments along the rail line with his employer, but was turned down. Next, he presented the idea to Santa Fe Railway President Charles Morse, who loved it and agreed to let Fred open a dining room in the Santa Fe Topeka train depot in 1876, rent-free. The deal was sealed only with a handshake, but it would have huge ramifications for both parties. The restaurant did well, and Fred opened up more along the line. Within a year, he was so successful he was able to purchase a hotel in Florence and added fine accommodations to his business services. Harkening back to his days in New York, each Harvey house provided a clean, safe place to relax and enjoy a good meal in polished and sophisticated surroundings. Where beans and biscuits had been the norm, Fred's menus featured thick, juicy steaks and hot, crispy hash browns. Meals were served on tables outfitted with imported linens, silver table service, and fine china, some of which was personalized with the Fred Harvey name. To add to the sense of gentility, Fred mandated that all men in the dining room must wear coats. But to make sure that no one would be turned away, a supply of dark alpaca coats was always kept on hand. By the early 1880s, Harvey was operating 17 restaurants along Santa Fe's main line. In 1881, he replaced his all-male staff with the Harvey Girls. Reports differ as to the reason for this change. Some articles I found indicated that the men were given trouble by the customers, perhaps not used to being served by men rather than women. Other information claims that many of the men used their paycheck to get drunk and then failed to show up for work. Whatever the reason, the implementation of Harvey Girls transformed Fred's business. Hired by putting advertisements in Eastern newspapers, these were young women who became known for their good looks, fine manners, and efficiency. Between the ages of 18 and 30, with good character and morals, they would contract for a 1-year service. They were paid as much as $17.50 a month and given free room, board, and clean uniforms. The girls resided in housing that was adjacent to the restaurants, where they were supervised by the most senior girl, who enforced curfews and chaperoned male visits. They were prohibited from marrying until they put in a full year of work. And by all reports, roughly 5,000 Harvey girls moved out west to work and ultimately marry. For the restaurants to work efficiently, management had to find ways for people to eat quickly during the limited time of a station stop. The typical process was that a gong in each Harvey house was used to alert the waitresses that the train was arriving, as well as attract the passengers to the dining room. The staff of the restaurant also received advance warning. A member of the train crew would count how many passengers indicated they would be eating, and they wired ahead with the information. The locomotive whistle just before the stop notified the waitresses that the train was coming into town. The following describes the scene at the Topeka Harvey house by Minnie Dubbs Millbrook, a former Harvey girl. There are still men and women in Topeka who remember the scene at the depot when the train came in. A white-aproned waiter, beating a brass gong with a wooden mallet, brought the passengers quickly to the dining room. The first course was on the table, and as soon as dinner was seated, the waitress went to the table asking, "Tea, iced tea, coffee, or milk?" and at the same time positioning the coffee cup at each place accordingly. It was quite a system. A cup right side up meant coffee, upside down meant tea, upside down and tilted off the saucer meant iced tea, and off the saucer, milk. So the girl coming behind to pour the drinks knew exactly what to pour. The service in the dining room was table d'hote with 2 choices for the main course. The plates already served in the kitchen with meat and vegetables were quickly placed on the tables. Noted architect Mary Jane Coulter was hired to design the buildings for the Fred Harvey Company that reflected their natural settings and utilized components found in Native American architecture of the time. At their peak, there were 84 Harvey houses, all of which catered to wealthy and middle-class visitors alike, and Fred became known as the civilizer of the West and the founding father of the American service industry. Business declined as roads improved and automobile, then air travel became possible. The Great Depression slowed business and industry even further to the point that fewer and fewer people traveled for any reason, let alone by train. World War II did prove a momentary reversal as troop trains needed meals for their passengers. Often, with very short notice, the Harvey houses again rose to the challenge. However, by the 1950s, the railroads, worn out by years of carrying war goods, were cutting back. The federal government began massive subsidies to the automobile and airline industries in the form of highway and airport construction funds, but provided nothing to the unsung heroes of World War II, the railroads. Against this prosperity and apparently free transportation, passenger trains began to decline. Most railroads were only too willing to use any excuse to eliminate passenger service. The Santa Fe was one of the holdouts, setting high standards all the way to Amtrak that other railroads would have copied. Even so, they eventually consolidated services, closed stationed and associated Harvey houses, and eliminated the trains. Again, the company adapted to changing conditions and began to focus on more freestanding restaurants, resorts, and national parks. By the early 1960s, the Fred Harvey Company had moved out of the Los Angeles Union Station and began operating the Music Center restaurant only a few blocks away. Fred Harvey created a legacy which was continued by his sons and remained in the family until the death of a grandson in 1965. In 1968, the Hawaii-based AmFac, now called Xanterra Corporation, bought the Fred Harvey Company and continues to operate today. Thank you for watching today's episode of Moments in History. If you enjoyed watching, be sure to subscribe so you'll never miss another episode. And you'll want to click the bell icon to be notified when I upload each installment, which is generally done on the second and fourth Fridays of each month. You can find me across social media on Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest. And if you want even more history, stop by my blog, History, Mystery, and Faith, found at www.lindashentonmatchett.com. Thanks for watching, and have a great day.